So my name is Ian Hazelden. I'm the founder and owner of CraftWilder Kombucha. We have a very non-traditional style of kombucha. We'll go more in depth on our philosophies, the ingredients that we use, our techniques, things of that nature. Go more into the health aspects of kombucha itself. I have a very long, extensive background in outdoors experiences. I've been spending a lot of years harvesting. I have 22 years of wild crafting experience. I spent over 12 years working in the restaurant industry, so I've got a lot of fine dining experience behind myself as well. I'm also self-educated in about 7 years of herbalism, so I really enjoy studying the natural compounds of plants, their traditional uses, and the effects on the body, and in terms of the use of health as well. So yeah, it's a really fulfilling adventure, that's for sure. Yeah, so we'll start with the closest here to myself. The 4 flavors that we've brought with us today. This one here is yellow cedar. We have elderflower, blackberry licorice fern root, and sage hawthorn and chokecherry. We'll start off with the cedar again. Cedar's a really interesting ingredient. It's actually one of 4 cedars that grow in Canada. Of the 4 cedars in Canada, this is the only one that's actually a hybrid between a cypress and a cedar, so it's not a true cedar. This particular plant is free of a compound called thujone, which is a neurotoxin commonly found in western red cedar, eastern white cedar, and the other cedar that you can actually find right along the border between Canada, the United States, and the Lower Mainland is the Port Orford cedar. The cedar is actually one of my favorite ingredients. It's got a lot of magical properties. It's been used in a lot of spiritual rituals in the First Nations community, and a lot of herbalism and healing properties as well. It also develops a little bit of an undertone of lemon to it as well. It does contain a chemical compound called limonene, which is used in a lot of like cosmetics, things for scented, sprays or things or body mist, things of that nature as well. So it shares a lot of that compound, which is why it doesn't taste like pure wood itself, which a lot of people would kind of assume out of a cedar that it tastes like wood. But it's by far actually one of my favorite ingredients. It's quite an interesting and adventurous flavor, and I highly recommend giving it a try. This bright yellow one here, this is elderflower. Elderflower is gaining a little bit more interest nowadays in terms of, being used in a lot of agricultural foods and things like that. There is a farm actually in Yarrow that does produce some elderflowers. You can go and pick them yourselves. The elderflower is a really interesting one. It's got a really pleasant citrus grapefruit tone to it as well. You get that little bit of that elderflower taste. It's not as pungent as bitter as elderflower is just on its own when it's raw. It's one of my favorites as well. A little bit interesting thing about the elderflowers as well is it actually contains a compound called chlorogenic acid. It's a mild antihistamine, and elderflower is also commonly used as like an antiviral for influenza and things of that nature. So this is one of the things that kind of just helps boost your immune system as well. This is a little bit more of a familiar flavor for people. This is just using wild blackberries. We're using 3 varieties of wild blackberries, so Himalayan, Allegheny, and trailing blackberries. It kind of has a little bit of a blackberry wine tang to it. Again, it's non-alcoholic. This one probably has the sweetest appeal out of it, and it's because we're using an ingredient called licorice fern root. It's not exactly licorice root itself, so if you're looking at a tree and you see the moss on a tree and you see these little leaflets that look like a fern growing out the side, that's actually licorice fern root. So those roots are referred to as a rhizome. It has a really sweet taste, and the reason being it has a really sweet taste is it contains a chemical compound called oscillin. Oscillin is basically like stevia extract. It just has a really sweet appeal and a low sugar content, which is why this one's a really easy and friendly flavor for people to get introduced. Moving on to the last flavor here, this is actually our newest flavor that we've released, and Daria was the one who created this particular blend. She's not on screen right now, but she's wonderful. This particular flavor, I really enjoy it as well. It's got a lot of different layers of complexity as well. The sage has a little bit of a herbaceous bitterness to it as well. It's not too overpowering. It kind of gives it that little bit, almost like a hoppiness or a little bit of that bitter taste similar to like a citrus beer. The hawthorn berries, the chokecherries, you get a really nice fruit note to it. You also get a really pleasant citrus undertone to it as well. So it's quite a well-balanced flavor, and the best way to compare it is kind of like a summer beer without it being alcoholic. We have a lot of different wildflowers with us. We didn't bring the wildflower flavor with us today. We wanted to get into some more of the adventurous things, but we wanted to bring some of the dry ingredients. They're really floral smelling, they're really interesting. This first one here that we have is this is a wild cherry blossom. There's actually a lot of different wild cherry blossoms that grow in BC. And Nicole, would you like to come and give everything a little sniff here?
I will.
There you go. You can hold on to this as well if you'd like. The cherry blossoms kind of have that really unique aroma. It has a really mild cherry scent to it, but you're almost going to get like an undertone of amaretto to it. I really love this flower. It's an amazing ingredient. It's used a lot as a for skincare. It's actually used to tighten up the skin, so it is an astringent. So it's one of those things that's really good as an antioxidant. It's used for longevity in a lot of different cultures as well. So
Wrinkles?
generally speaking, yeah, it can help tighten the skin for some people, you know, but we don't want anybody to feel ashamed of how they look. We want everybody to feel comfortable with who they are. That's the most important thing, right? Moving into this next flower here, this is probably one of my favorites. This is the black locust flower. It's quite a prized one. It's got such an incredible smell to it. Such a beautiful floral note to it. It's got almost like a berry scent to it. It almost, for me, tastes very similar to a trailing blackberry, which is not as common as the other blackberries. It's almost got, if you've been to the fair and you've had the blue cotton candy, the berry one, that's kind of what this tastes like. So it's really quite unique. By far one of my favorites. This next flower that we have here, maybe a little bit more common. It is indigenous to BC. This is flowering red currant. Flowering red currant, again, is another really potent flower. It's great for infusions, cold infusions, kombucha, of course. Again, it's one of my favorite flowers. In terms of medicinal uses, it's used for female vitality, essentially. So it can help sustain pre- and postmenopausal symptoms. So this is actually one of the ones, we blend a lot of the flowers into the wildflower because a lot of these flowers have a lot of properties that are particularly beneficial for women. So that's kind of like the underlying intention behind that one, but it's not to say that men can't enjoy it. I'm totally into the flowers. You'll see me outside with a handful of petals just gnawing away at them. This is just wild lemon balm. It's a really easy introductory ingredient for a lot of people. It has that really nice lemon tone to it. We brew this in the kombucha, so we use the entire plant. We use the stems and all. We don't waste anything. It develops almost kind of like a reminiscent beer flavor to it. It's got a little bit of almost like a hoppiness, but it's got a really pleasant citrus note to it as well. So it's a little bit herby, a little bit citrusy, and it's one of those things that's, it's an introductory level thing for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have a lot of experience with wild foods, and a lot of people are also concerned with trying things because they don't have that experience with it as well. So it's a great way to kind of help push people in the right direction. Yeah, so a lot of these particular ingredients actually you can find in the lower mainland of BC. We don't really like to harvest inside city limits. There's a lot of potential for contaminants, but you can find things like cherry blossoms on the borders, at the bottom foothills of Mission there, around Bear Mountain. You can find things around the foothills behind Vetter Mountain if you really like to. A lot of these areas outside of the city limits are the best place to harvest. Again, you're gonna steer away from things like glyphosate, biochemicals, pesticides, fertilizers. The locust flower is one actually. You can find this particular plant growing all through the lower mainland of BC. You can find a lot of this growing on the way to Chilliwack Lake. If you desire to go out and pick some yourself, there's quite an abundance, so there's enough for everybody to go around. Same with the flowering red currant. Now again, generally speaking, I find this in a lot more forested regions. It does grow in a lot of areas as well where there's sunshine. It's not a particularly fickle plant. It does like a little bit of humidity, a little bit of shade. But again, it's just a really incredible flower. It's got a really amazing flavor, and you can find it in a lot of different places, along riversides, the mountains. It's quite a versatile plant. The lemon balm, it's a little bit more temperate. We're actually spreading the seeds in various areas throughout BC to kind of increase the numbers of this in the wild harvested area. Generally speaking, you find this out more heading out towards Hope in more temperate regions. This probably was one of the things that grew just subsequent of human presence as well. Eventually these things just travel through other animals as well. So this here is our friend the SCOBY. My brother likes to call him Scooby the SCOBY, so we're gonna call him Scooby for right now. But SCOBY is actually a symbiotic culture of bacteria yeast. SCOBY is an acronym for this little creature here. It's a living organism. This particular creature, it thrives off oxygen, a food source being sugar, and in the process of fermentation, it's consuming this sugar and imparting with gluconic, lactic, and acetic acids and probiotic beneficial bacteria, which is main reason why people drink kombuchas, for that digestive wellness. Yeah, so generally speaking, actually, the SCOBY didn't really initially start from fungi itself. The SCOBY well, the actual culture of the bacteria was discovered about 2,000 years ago in China by a gentleman named Kombu. So Kombu, I guess, technically translates to Kombu's tea. So cha is tea in Chinese. So that's the correlation. A lot of people refer to it as a mushroom simply because of how the SCOBY itself looks, but it's actually not a fungi or a mushroom particularly. This for us is just, again, an idea to play on the wild harvested aspect and kind of show people what mushrooms are, and versus the SCOBY itself. Being a living organism, it is something that requires a lot of attention and care. It is a kind of a pet and a friend. So at the end of the day, you really want to take care of it. So for those of you who might be allergic to fungi or things of that nature, you don't have to worry. It's not actually a mushroom or a fungi itself. But you can always find some fungi and mushroom while you're out harvesting and making your own wild-crafted kombucha too. We first off want to thank everybody for their time today. Chilliwack Fair, the community of Chilliwack. You know, we really appreciate your time and energy today to share all of this information as well. We're really excited to share CraftWilder Kombucha with you as well. You can find our products actually here in Chilliwack at Produce Gone Wild, Cerritus, and their north location as well. For those of you who aren't in Chilliwack, you can find us in Abbotsford at the Polyfox. You can find us at Palms and Coquitlam, and also Greens Markets in Vancouver area. And we look forward to seeing you in face at the farmers markets next year.